Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Joseph Morris live stream. If you're new here, I am Joseph Morris. I'm a true crime case discussion channel. So if that's for you, please hit the subscribe button below. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a live, and please press like. It's a little cold in my studio, I'm being honest, but I'm joined here with my co-host Gabby. And there she is. She likes hanging out with me as we discuss some pretty wild things that sometimes I feel like I need to scrub myself with bleach after, because this case with the Ghislaine Maxwell case is a horrendous and disgusting case. And honestly, it's a bit of a trigger warning to those out there who are triggered by child trafficking and abuse, because this particular case actually does deal a lot with that. And because I don't want to get demonetized by YouTube, I'm going to be censoring my language quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. I won't be going into detail about the actual what had happened between them. It's pretty disgusting to say the least. So I'm just going to keep that out of my mouth, and I'm just going to discuss things that are allegations brought up against none other than Prince Andrew. And I'm going to be completely honest and keep it gangster with everybody in here. I am an Irish Canadian. So my roots in European roots is Ireland. I'm not a part really of the UK. I'm kind of seen as like the outsider of the UK. So my family is Irish. We moved to Quebec and we're like sort of French Canadian. So the idea of a French Canadian Irish guy talking about Prince Andrew, forgive me if I make a lot of mistakes. I just learned about the city of York today. I know that sounds really bad. I've been following this case forever, but I finally got around to looking up the city of York and realizing that Prince Andrew is the Duke of York. And he's since been ostracized by his family because of all the allegations that I get posed against him by Virginia Giuffre. And what happened with the verdict of Ghislaine Maxwell, sorry, I keep calling her Ghislaine, it's Ghislaine. But what happened with Ghislaine Maxwell the other day was that she was found guilty of 5 of the 6 counts brought up against her. And some of these counts are playing into the fact that Prince Andrew was affiliated with some of these trafficking accounts. So this isn't looking good for Prince Andrew, because this has thrusted him into the spotlight. And here's the thing about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was he was actually never explicitly mentioned in the testimonies of the women, besides Jane, who said, Jane is a pseudonym, by the way, but Jane said that she actually saw Prince Andrew on the Lolita Express, and that was the only time Prince Andrew was ever mentioned in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. However, because of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial and this Jane character, Jane wasn't the only one who was affiliated with the Prince Andrew case, because Virginia Giuffre is pressing charges in a civil suit against Prince Andrew for SAing her multiple times. And Prince Andrew is going to be using one of the testimonies done by Carolyn in his defense, because Carolyn actually said that Virginia Giuffre recruited her to be assaulted by Epstein. So Prince Andrew is kind of shining a spotlight on Carolyn's testimony, trying to dismiss Virginia Giuffre's claims against him. And, you know, I think the royal family is making a huge strategy and technique to distance themselves from Prince Andrew even more so than they already have after that disaster of a BBC interview, which we will be discussing. But this is some news that just came in. So again, Virginia Giuffre is the one right here. She is doing a civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew. And she writes, the request is part of a lawsuit Giuffre filed in August for infliction of emotional distress and battery. Giuffre claims she was forced to have S with the Duke 3 times in 2001 at Epstein's command. Prince Andrew strenuously denies these allegations. And in her filing, it was recently posted that her lawsuit is asking Prince Andrew to prove that he cannot sweat, because this is his disaster of a BBC interview he did years ago that he actually lost his royal duties after. So let me just get this straight. After this disastrous BBC interview, Andrew was forced to give up his duties as a working member of the royal family after his disastrous interview in 2019 with the BBC that only increased public concern about his ties to Epstein and Maxwell. So if I'm playing this clip, this is exactly what he said right here.
She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at, and I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat.
So on the night of the SA of Virginia Giuffre, she claims that Prince Andrew was dancing with her and he was sweating profusely, and that's the reason why he's dismissing the claims against her from the start, was because he doesn't sweat. He says he doesn't sweat because of a war injury, something about adrenaline, and I don't know, but he just basically said, well, that can't be me. I don't even know who Virginia Giuffre is. I don't even know who she is because I don't remember her and I don't sweat. Well, that was quickly proven false. And the next day, everybody published this image of Prince Andrew sweating. And I mean, I'll ask the audience here. Let me ask the audience, because that'll be fun. Do you see Prince Andrew sweating? Ask your community. So someone in the chat asked why it was disastrous, and it was disastrous because Epstein in 2008 was found guilty and he served jail time for trafficking children, pretty much. And Ghislaine Maxwell was found to be a close friend of Prince Andrew at the time, because Ghislaine Maxwell met Prince Andrew at Oxford University and they were really good friends. And by association, he is seen as guilty for that reason in a lot of the court of the public opinion. And in that interview, he actually says that he is close friends with Epstein. And then that's the reason why everybody sort of distanced themselves from the royal family, actually started distancing themselves from Prince Andrew. So let me just get right into one of these news reports right here.
Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction has turned the spotlight on the rich and powerful men for whom young girls were trafficked. Prince Andrew has always denied any involvement, but attention is on him now and his hearing, which starts in just a few days. This morning, the aftershock from Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction felt far and wide. The 60-year-old found guilty of 5 federal charges.
I just feel so grateful that the jury believed us and sent a strong message that perpetrators of sexual abuse and exploitation will be held accountable no matter how much power and privilege that they have.
Attention now turning to Maxwell's friend, Prince Andrew, who stands accused of sexual abuse in a separate civil suit in New York. Virginia Giuffre, seen here in a picture with the Queen's son and Maxwell in the background, allegedly taken decades ago, accuses the royal of having sex with her on several occasions, starting with when she was just 17, a claim the Duke has always denied.
I've said consistently and frequently that we never had any sort of sexual contact.
A hearing for the case is set for Tuesday. The Prince's lawyers, however, are calling for the suit to be thrown out. Giuffre's lawyer, who is the same counsel for Annie Farmer, who testified in Maxwell's trial, had this to say following the Maxwell verdict.
What you've seen here is a jury who took it upon themselves to believe in these victims, hear their voices, and render a verdict that told the American public that regardless of power, privilege, whether you're a president or a prince, you will be held accountable if you engage in sexual trafficking.
The Prince, who's ninth in line to the British throne, has long maintained his innocence, including in a now infamous 2019 BBC interview where he had this exchange regarding any possible interactions with his accuser.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time.
In the same interview, he distanced himself from Maxwell.
If there are questions that Ghislaine has to answer, that's her problem. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to comment one way or the other.
But he's never denied their friendship, saying she was his link to Epstein. The two seen in this photo shown during Maxwell's trial, which, according to the Telegraph, was taken at the Queen's Balmoral estate in Scotland.
So basically he's trying to say, hey, I'm not really that close to Ghislaine, but the reality is you see photos of him basically inviting two predators over to sit at the Queen's lodge. So which one is it? As well as we'll get more into the allegations brought up against Prince Andrew and how he's dismissing them. And honestly, this really reminds me of how when Princess Diana, going way back, I grew up with Princess Diana being at the forefront of the royal family, and just watching her and what she went through at the royal family and how she was basically dismissed because of her bulimia and all the mental health struggles that she endured in the royal family, and how quickly the royal family dismisses the plight of women, I think kind of plays into here. Also with the Meghan Markle as well, how Meghan Markle basically admitted that she was wanting to off herself. I can't say the word, but wanting to off herself, and basically how the royal family dismissed her feelings as well. And something that I want to really bring up here was that the key testimony in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was the testimony of, key evidence in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was the testimony of these four brave women. And these four brave women stood up there. One of them wasn't Virginia Giuffre, by the way. She didn't take the stand, nor did Ghislaine Maxwell actually in her defense. But these testimonies of these four women is what proved the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty of all these charges, as well as when it comes to the civil suit brought up against Prince Andrew, the fact that the criminal case was proven by these testimonies of these four women, it actually means that the civil suit brought up against Prince Andrew will most likely be won because the burden of proof in a civil suit is actually less than a criminal case. So if Virginia Giuffre sits up there and gives her testimony about Prince Andrew, that might be enough to charge Prince Andrew with these allegations, with these crimes. And Prince Andrew, in his spotlight put up against him after the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict, has been ostracized by the royal family. And let's just get into that because it's actually kind of funny. Thank you so much for being here. I am a true crime case discussion channel. If that's for you, please hit subscribe And do not forget to ring the bell so you never miss a video. But this is something that's really funny about Prince Andrew. He's being totally ostracized by his family. He's being treated as a black sheep because of his association with Ghislaine Maxwell, which he vehemently denies, but everybody kind of knows that his hands are dirty here. So this is a report done by The Sun, actually this morning. Yeah, this morning. It was updated just right now. So Prince Andrew is holed up alone in Windsor after pal Ghislaine Maxwell convicted of trafficking. So basically, he's totally being left out in the dark. His family is basically treating him as a black sheep. And they already did that after the disastrous BBC interview, which I just played, where he basically admits like, hey, Ghislaine Maxwell is a close friend of mine. This is after Epstein was found guilty of trafficking children and got that sweetheart deal in 2008, which I love bringing up because it blows my mind. But he's already known to be a predator at this point, and Prince Andrew has been hanging out with Epstein, and that looks really bad for the royal family. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how Giuffre actually met Epstein. Giuffre is one of Epstein's child trafficking victims who was introduced to the predator at Donald Trump's Mar-a-lago. I pronounce it Mar-a-lago, but it's like his resort. And this criminal case, this civil case, was brought up against Prince Andrew in August. And it's for infliction of emotional distress and battery. Giuffre claims she was forced to have intercourse with the Duke 3 times in 2001 at Epstein's command. Prince Andrew strenuously denies the allegations. So just to reiterate, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty of child trafficking. Virginia Giuffre is one of Epstein's victims, and she was 17 at the time of this interaction with Prince Andrew. So she was underage, and she was actually flown out to London to engage in these behaviors. So she obviously is a minor. But the funny thing is, it's not funny, but I'll get into this in a bit. Prince Andrew is actually possibly dismissing the case against Virginia Giuffre because in New York, the age of consent is 17. So this case, that's the only loophole that Prince Andrew could potentially use up against him to basically dismiss the case. But I just want to get a little more into Prince Andrew and how, as we all think right now, he actually is sweating. Because, I mean, I took a poll and I think overwhelming, you guys actually responded that he can sweat. Let me just read this poll real quick. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a case discussion channel. 91% of you guys said yes, he sweats, and that's hilarious. So he is sweating right now, and for good reason, because as we all know, he's found Ghislaine Maxwell, his longtime friend he met at Oxford University way back when they were in university together, was found guilty of trafficking, and Prince Andrew has a charge against him right now by Virginia Giuffre of trafficking. So it's not looking good. And, you know, it was proven in a court of law that a testimony by an accuser is enough to find someone guilty. So this is not looking good for Prince Andrew. And this is a report done by The Mirror. And I'm going to actually get into more why I think Prince Andrew is actually a full-on predator, and how I know probably some of you guys are from the UK, but how there's major issues with the royal family and how they treat cases. But it's just a fair warning. I may actually offend some people in a bit, but it's all based on factual sourced information. I included all my sources in the description below. But okay, so Prince Andrew's lawyers locked in emergency talks over Maxwell's conviction. So immediately after the conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell, I always pronounce her Ghislaine, but Ghislaine Maxwell, he apparently locked himself away and was discussing with his lawyers what he can potentially do to save his butt, essentially. And it says he vehemently denied that this happened, but this is from a report from The Mirror. So it says here, Prince Andrew's lawyers were locked in emergency talks last night following the conviction of his pal, Ghislaine Maxwell, as they considered calling on one of her victims to help him in his U.S. civil case, which includes allegations of abuse and first-degree R-word. I can't say the words on my YouTube because I'll get slapped with an 18-plus warning, but... So as we all know, she's facing 65 years in prison, and if Prince Andrew is found guilty, he can... I think he'll at least face, I don't know how much he'll be faced in prison, but that'd be interesting to know if anybody can let me know if he does find guilty of the allegations presented against him by Virginia Giuffre. I would love to know that, but he is basically being served papers by Virginia Giuffre about these abuses of her being trafficked to Prince Andrew and offered up by Epstein. So very, very compelling case we're talking about here. And I'm just going to jump right into how he has denied Giuffre's allegations and claim he has no memory of meeting her. And this is old skeletons, but it is very interesting because he's constantly trying to dismiss and basically make women shut up, as the royal family kind of does, because I brought up Princess Diane and Meghan Markle. So Prince Andrew is being treated like the black sheep of the family. Prince Andrew's lawyers were locked in emergency talks, and Prince Andrew has denied Giuffre's allegations and claim he has no memory of meeting her, even though he's been photographed with her and Maxwell in 2001. Okay, and here's the really weird thing about this photograph. As you all know, deepfakes are a thing, right? And his defense against this photograph, as I just played the BBC interview where he says he has no memory of meeting her, he doesn't sweat, 91% of you says he sweats. He says in this defense that this image here is a deep fake. He says, you know how people nowadays, you can put other people's faces on other images and you can actually do it to videos and it's called deep fakes. He says someone did that to him in this photo. That was his major defense. He says this photo was faked, and he's just digging that hole more and more deeper, in my opinion, because nobody believes this photo is faked. Nobody believes he doesn't sweat. These excuses by Prince Andrew is, I mean, I don't like to pearl clutch on my YouTube channel, like, but this is a pearl clutch and a half because like this guy is shameless. I mean, saying this is a deep fake. So after the disastrous BBC interview in 2019, he was forced to give up his duties as a working member of the royal family, and he has been ostracized since. And he is just digging that hole deeper. So he argues against the allegations done by Virginia Giuffre. So obviously, Virginia Giuffre in this filing actually wants Prince Andrew to prove he can't sweat. And something that's interesting about this too, the documents also reveal that Giuffre's lawyers are asking for deeply personal information from the British royal, including any documents concerning any allegations of abuse or extramarital affairs made against you. So if this civil suit is brought to court, there is going to be a lot more given to the public. We're going to find more about Prince Andrew's extramarital affairs, if there are any previous abuse allegations, if there are any, and as well as he did this deal in 2009. I'm going to get into this and I'm going to prove it with sources, but he did this deal in 2009 that apparently absolves him from any sort of case brought up against him by association with Epstein. So it's similar to Epstein's 2008 sweetheart deal. He got this secret deal that no one knows about from 2009 that apparently protects him from the Virginia Giuffre civil lawsuit. But we're going to find this out if this goes to court, what that deal is all about. And I'm just sitting here with like my hands like, what was this deal? Because we still don't know what this deal was. He's saying that this deal protects him from this civil suit. And I mean, we'll see about that, Mr. Prince Andrew. So she's asking for emotional distress and battery. She claims that she had relations with the Duke 3 times in 2001 at Epstein's command, and Prince Andrew denies these allegations. And then we have the testimony by Jane done in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, where he was seen on a plane, which is the Lolita Express. And this was also corroborated by the flight logs given by the captain, the airline captain. And there was also another testimony by a pseudonym called Caroline, who basically said that Virginia Giuffre actually was one of the people who helped Epstein find girls. And the word that she used was SE girls. I don't know. I can't say the word on YouTube, but it's like SLU, E girls. So those type of girls she was instructed to get by Epstein to serve them up to help recruit more victims for Epstein. So Prince Andrew is going to be using that testimony possibly against Virginia Giuffre. But I think it's important in this case to recognize that no one's perfect, and especially Virginia Giuffre, who is a minor at this time. And, I don't think that should be used against her. And I think Prince Andrew, if he does use that, that's pretty shameless. And again, pearl clutching. So Andrew initially denied that he had been legally served with court papers. So he has 5 arguments. I narrowed them down to 5 arguments that Prince Andrew is using against the civil lawsuit. The first argument that he's using is that he denies ever getting the lawsuit. And I just want to check how many people are here. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I just got a super chat. Prince Charles' best mate was Jimmy Savile. Check him out. Thank you so much, Jimmy Jones. You guys are the best. I'm not, thank you so much. I'm lost for words. Thank you, Jimmy Jones. I appreciate that. So this is what he writes. Andrew's team then disputed the lawsuit. And here's where it gets interesting. So this is the first of 5 excuses he has used. The first one is that he denies ever getting the lawsuit. First excuse, denies ever getting the lawsuit. Prince Andrew was like, I never received it. That was his excuse. It writes, Andrew's team then disputed the lawsuit, telling a U.S. court this week that Giuffre had not effectively served his client with the lawsuit, which he referred to as, quote, baseless, non-viable, and possibly unlawful, end quote. So he's just saying, I didn't receive it. She didn't serve it to me properly. And he's basically trying to absolve himself from any of this lawsuit by just saying, I never got it. And that was his first problem. He just said he never got it. But here's where it gets even more sketchy. And I'm just going to put this guy on blast because let's be real here. This guy is a predator. I'm sorry, Prince Andrew, if you're watching, crazier things have happened. But this is what he does. He lawyers up with a Hollywood lawyer. And I don't know the person's name. I should probably know that considering I'm a YouTuber, but he lawyers up with a lawyer known for protecting Armie Hammer. So Armie Hammer is another guy who has allegations of the R word, abuse against women up against him. And he was like this huge star whose text messages were leaked to the public. And Prince Andrew is using the same lawyer as this guy, Armie Hammer. And I'm not too sure if people really know him on my channel, but these screenshots have been leaked from Armie Hammer and they're absolutely disgusting. I don't know if you guys read them. I'm going to read them out now. So Armie Hammer writes, I'm going to be thinking of breaking your bones. Talk to me. Text me about me breaking your bones while I am R-wording you. And I'll send you the voice note while reading it. My whatever is in my hand and I'm thinking of breaking your ribs. So This guy has Army Hammer, has a ton of allegations by women up against him. And Army Hammer lawyered up, and Prince Andrew is using the same lawyer as Army Hammer. And I just found that connection like so crazy. Like, oh God, I'm sorry if you're triggered by this, but there's more. I think at one point he talks about eating. Yeah, eating her. Army Hammer writes, brand you, tattoo you, mark you, shave your head and keep your hair with me, cut a piece of your skin off and make you cook it for me. So this guy, Army Hammer, is talking about cannibalism, and Prince Andrew is using the same lawyer as Army Hammer. And this is, I can't stress that enough. It's absolutely horrific that this is even a thing. So again, I want to see everything. I want to see your brain, your blood, your organs, every part of you. I would definitely bite it. Okay, so this is just like, again, when I discuss this case, sometimes I just feel like I need to drink bleach. And this is one of those moments. And so moving on to his number 2 excuse, he says, a secret settlement. And this is the settlement I was talking about earlier. This is excuse number 2 of 5 Prince Andrew is using to dismiss Virginia Giuffre's case. He writes, a secret settlement protects Prince Andrew from the case in 2009. This settlement will be released publicly next week. So this is the first time I've heard about this settlement. It goes, so at the virtual hearing, Giuffre's attorneys were asked to provide a copy of a secret settlement agreement that he argued would protect his client from liability. He said that the document, which remains under seal, has already been protected other individuals accused of similar conduct. So I think at this point, and this is an article written in September, and it's only coming out now, I think, because people have a renewed interest in Prince Andrew, but he's basically saying that he knows who Virginia Giuffre is, and he's basically admitting in a very implicit way of these allegations against him that they are true, because he's defending himself and he's digging his hole so much deeper by basically saying this allegations presented by Virginia Giuffre, I'm protected against because I have a secret settlement. And the spooky thing is, no one knows what this secret settlement even entails. And when Virginia Giuffre's civil lawsuit has its day in court, which potentially could happen next week, this is going to be unsealed, possibly next week and within the coming weeks. If this civil lawsuit is brought to court, and then the actual case, Virginia Giuffre versus Prince Andrew, is going to be happening in fall 2022. So I'm looking forward to what's in this secret settlement that allegedly protects Prince Andrew from the civil lawsuit against Virginia Giuffre. I mean, we can only speculate, but I would be very interested in what you guys have to say about that, because it says here, while the contents of the settlement agreement are unknown, yeah, no one knows. And it's very weird. Like, it's like, what is this settlement? And almost like, what are the previous allegations do you have if you have this settlement? And what? I don't know. So my next point, number 3 of 5, is also Prince Andrew basically again admitting that he's guilty. And he goes on record, his attorneys go on record saying that Prince Andrew's lawyer want the abuse suit dismissed because plaintiff was age of consent. So essentially he's admitting to what he did, and he is saying that this lawsuit done by Virginia Giuffre should be thrown out because she was 17, which is weird. I mean, at the time he must have been over 35. I mean, I can't imagine being 35 and having a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is just so weird to me personally. And just the idea that he's saying, yeah, I did it, but she was 17, is like, again, I need to get my bleach out, because I can't imagine someone that age interacting like that with a 17-year-old, even if it was an age of consent. I just think that's so incredibly wrong. And the fact that he basically, again, went back on his previous claims, like, I don't know her. Basically, his lawyers are saying that he does know her. And she was legal at the time because the age of consent in New York is 17, which is interesting because I heard reports that because she filed it in New York, the age of consent is 17, but the actual relationship took place in London. So I'm not too sure what the age of consent in London is, if you guys can let me know. But I just think this is a very poor excuse. So it goes, in her civil suit, Giuffre reiterates allegations she's made publicly against Queen Elizabeth's son since January 2015. She says 61-year-old, yeah, so he was 61 years old, R-worded her and assaulted her after she was trafficked to him at age 17 by Andrew's former friend, Jeffrey Epstein, who obviously murdered himself in 2019. But the thing is, I don't believe on this channel that Epstein murdered himself. I can't say the S word again because of YouTube's laws, but I think that was all staged as well. So obviously Andrew has denied all her accusations, but his lawyers say, even if he did, she's of age and this should be thrown out, which is very bizarre. And she's using something called, and I do not understand this too well, and I need to look more into it, but it's called the New York Child Victims Act. And she's pressing these charges against Prince Andrew using the New York Child Victims Acts. So according to a memo filed Monday to the Southern District of New York, lawyers for Andrew say Giuffre's claims are based on evidence that is not a reasonable mechanism to be used under the New York Child Victims Act, which allows accusers to sue beyond the statute of limitations. Giuffre sued days before that act expired in August. So basically this act, there's a statute of limitations on these claims you can make against someone. And I think they're only about like a couple, you have a certain amount of time to press charges after the altercation, the criminality took place. And if it passes, like, I'm not too sure, like 5-6 years, your case is thrown out. And because of this New York Child Victims Act, it allows her to press charges about altercations that happened years ago presently. And so Giuffre is basically allowed to press charges against Prince Andrew with altercations that happened way back because of this New York Child Victims Act. And I think that's how I'm going to explain it. I probably confused everybody, but she actually pressed these charges days before the statute of limitations ran out. So she was like last minute in the 11th hour, threw that basketball and got it in before the statute of limitations ran out. But it is interesting that in New York, age of consent is 17. So Prince Andrew may actually have a case there. But I'm rooting for Virginia Giuffre at the end of the day because I think, Prince Andrew has been caught in so many lies. And as he's trying to defend himself, he's digging his hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And I just wish he came clean and said, I know Virginia Giuffre. I know who she was. I did sleep with her, but the age of consent was 17. Because right now we haven't really got that on record. And all we have is that BBC interview where he claims that he doesn't sweat. And so the more and more he defends himself, the bigger the hole he's digging. And so I'm discussing, that was 3 of 5. And number 4 of 5 was that the suit wasn't properly served to him according to UK law because she lives in Australia and can't sue. So this is the most recent claim done by Prince Andrew trying to get out of this lawsuit. But I think he's going to have to face his day in court. It says here, Prince Andrew's latest attempt to stop Virginia Giuffre's abuse case in U.S. court is claiming that she lives in Australia and can't sue. So she's an Australian American, and he's trying to find a loophole again, saying that she's out of jurisdiction because she's Australian. So it says here, Prince Andrew is making yet another attempt to halt Virginia Giuffre's abuse lawsuit against him, this time claiming she doesn't have the jurisdiction to file her lawsuit in U.S. courts because she lives in Australia. So again, he's just trying to get this court case thrown out. And I mean, I just think it's absolutely awful that this guy is going to this level where he's trying to find all these loopholes. And, you know, I mean, his lawyers must be working overtime right now. And I think again, I talk about this a lot on my channel, but the court of public opinion sees him as guilty. The royal family sees him as guilty. And honestly, the royal family, I think, just as a Canadian in my attic, I don't know if you guys are new here. I'm just a Canadian in my attic with my dog. And I think the reputation of the royal family has been very tarnished by Prince Andrew. And I mean, they stripped him of his royal duties, but even then, I think they have a very long way to go. And in terms of just like how I know a lot of people hate Meghan Markle, but Meghan Markle talked a little about how she had some mental illness problems and how those were dismissed. And then now we're talking about, obviously, Princess Diana. I've seen the Netflix show too. She suffered from mental illness and that was dismissed. And then now we're talking about more women speaking out. And, you know, this is, again, a bad look for the royal family. Just this idea that this guy, the Duke, is basically dismissing this and not trying to almost gaslight the situation and make it seem like she has no right to be trying to seek damages for what she experienced and all of her. I mean, the suit itself actually says that she's suing for damages because of her mental illness. She writes, battery, I think it is. Okay. So her actual suit says, it's filed in August, says for infliction of emotional distress and battery. That's the reason why she's suing Prince Andrew. And so very, very interesting how this is going to go down. So that is number 4 of 5 is the jurisdiction, because she's Australian. He feels that it's not an appropriate suit. Number 5 is Giuffre, and I touched on this in a bit, but Giuffre recruited girls for Epstein to abuse. The woman known in court as Carolyn revealed that it was not the Brit who recruited her, but Giuffre. So this is used by Prince Andrew and his lawyers to basically cast doubt on Virginia Giuffre. This is from the New York Post. So the lawyers of Prince Andrew is saying they are hoping to seize on smoking gun testimony given by one of the 4 women referred to during Maxwell's trial as Carolyn, which is a pseudonym, on how she was introduced to Epstein. Carolyn testifies that Giuffre, not Maxwell, had taken her to Epstein's Palm Beach mansion in the early 2000s. So I guess what happened with these women was that it was kind of like a pyramid scheme where they would actually recruit other women. They were victims, and then they would like recruit other victims. So Virginia Giuffre, I mean, she's not a perfect person. She probably has a lot of trauma. She probably wasn't thinking right. And she probably was just victimizing other women. I mean, she's a human being too, and I don't think this should be used against her. So it says here, a legal source told the outlet, Andrew's U.S. team immediately seized upon Carolyn's testimony. So it says here as well, Carolyn's testimony could be used by Prince Andrew's lawyers as they attempt to discredit Giuffre by claiming she helped recruit young girls for Epstein. They believe she holds a smoking gun to any possible role Virginia played in Epstein's pyramid scheme of abuse. Andrew's lawyers have convinced him that if he is to stand any chance in preventing her case from going to court, they need to fight with fire and that nothing should be off limits. They believe Carolyn's evidence seriously, if not fatally, weakened the case against the prince. So yeah, they could potentially use Carolyn's testimony about Virginia Giuffre to poke holes in Giuffre's case against him. So with Maxwell's conviction, Prince Andrew's lawyers are said to be concerned because the burden of proof is lower in civil cases than in criminal cases. So, you know, we talked about this before, but testimonies of women will be enough to convict Prince Andrew. So very interesting. Those are the 5 excuses I brought up against Prince Andrew and putting him on blast. So first of all, he denied and lawyered up with Armie Hammer's lawyer, which is so sketchy. 2, he talks about a secret settlement that protects him from this civil lawsuit. 3, she was 17 at the time, so his hands aren't dirty. 4, she's out of jurisdiction because she's an Australian. And 5, he's going to be using Carolyn's testimony from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial to poke holes in Giuffre's allegations. So if his lawyers are unsuccessful at doing this or the case is not settled, the royal could face a trial date between September and December 2022. So next year, around the same time, could be the time that he sees his day in court and all this will come out. And I think it's important to just really, I'm full disclosure, I'm on Virginia Giuffre's side. I think this guy is digging the hole deeper and deeper, and it just proves so much of his guilt. And I just want to leave it on what Virginia Giuffre had to say. She writes this: "My soul yearned for justice for years, and today the jury gave me just that. I will remember the day always. Having lived with the horrors of Maxwell's abuse, my heart goes out to the many other girls and young women who suffered at her hands and whose lives she destroyed. I hope that today is not the end, but rather another step in justice being served. Maxwell did not act alone. Others must be held accountable. I have faith that they will be." So I just also want to touch a little bit on the other women who could actually band together because, you know, in Ghislaine Maxwell's case, the key pieces of evidence was the testimonies of the 4 women who were brave enough to step up and come out of the shadows into the courtroom and convict Ghislaine Maxwell to up to 65 years in prison, a jury finding her guilty of 5 of the 6 counts. And in Virginia's case, she has allies too. It's not just her. There's another woman, and her name is Joanna. And Joanna actually was there when the abuse of Virginia took place. And this may disturb a lot of people, but I am going to discuss a little bit about how she was abused. And it's a little weird. I got to be honest. It is. So now 41, she alleges it was there that the Queen's second son groped her in an incident during which a latex spitting image puppet of the Duke was used to abuse Virginia Roberts, who was 17, with Maxwell in attendance. So this is kind of weird. I thought I read this wrong, but I don't think I did. And I did do a little tweet here, and I didn't go, it kind of flopped. I don't know. People from UK, I don't think they really use Twitter, but I know this is a big UK case. But this is what he abused Virginia Giuffre with. So just to leave everybody with another disturbed mental image, this is what the lady said that Prince Andrew abused her with, was a spitting image doll of himself. And I don't know how that works. How do you abuse somebody with a puppet? I find that really crazy. Really, really crazy. And this is the lady who can stand together with Virginia Giuffre to prove that Prince Andrew is a predator. So According to legal documents, the alleged inappropriate conduct did not end there. Miss Roberts, now 37. Okay, so Virginia Giuffre's last name is sometimes referred to as Giuffre or Roberts, but in this one is referred to as Roberts. Claims that after the spitting image incident, she and Andrew slept together in a massage room at Epstein's house, dubbed the Dungeon. So Andrew, of course, denies all these assertions. And so it is kind of weird. And just to put a visual image in everybody's mind, like about the spitting image thing, I don't get it. But this is Prince Andrew hanging out with Epstein. And this is the lady here, Johanna, who can stand together with Virginia Giuffre to take Prince Andrew down. And Prince Andrew is getting caught in so many lies. And this is a bad look for the royal family. And hopefully more and more people are exposed. In America, we have Bill Clinton. This is Bill Clinton with one of his Epstein's alleged victims. And so it's not over, guys. This isn't the end. And I just want to play this clip by this woman here because I found what she said was very powerful. And I'm going to be reading your chats.
These fights take a long time. Nobody wants to go into court and talk about the most humiliating experiences of their lives. Nobody wants to be cross-examined for hour after hour, as the 4 accusers in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial were. But they did it, and they did it for one reason, to get justice. And now they have gotten it. And I hope they are all walking a little taller today and feeling the love that so many people are sending out to them for the courage and what they showed, because we got some justice today. It's, it's very sad what Ghislaine Maxwell did. And, we don't, it's very sad that she's going to spend probably the rest of her life in prison, but she brought it on herself. She did this. I want to emphasize, not just one day, not just 1 week or 1 month, but
I'm also going to play this one.
Ghislaine Maxwell is just one of the court cases associated with the activities of Jeffrey Epstein, who, as we heard earlier, died in prison shortly after he was convicted of sex offences. Another one of those court cases is a civil suit being taken by Virginia Giuffre, formerly Virginia Roberts, against Prince Andrew, accusing him of sexual assault. Those are allegations that Prince Andrew has always strenuously denied. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports.
Caught by the camera in this now infamous photograph, on the left, Prince Andrew, in the centre, the then 17-year-old Virginia Roberts, and on the right, smiling for the camera, Ghislaine Maxwell. Andrew's friendship with Ghislaine Maxwell goes back more than 20 years. Here he is with her at Royal Ascot in June 2000. At the time, she was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. Epstein was there as well. He too was a guest of Prince Andrew at Royal Ascot. Andrew spoke about his friendship with Epstein and his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, in his Newsnight interview.
In 2000, Epstein was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation.
But certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, +1 to some extent in that aspect.
Am I right in thinking you threw a birthday party for Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, at Sandringham?
No, it was a shooting weekend.
A shooting weekend?
Just a straightforward shooting weekend.
Racing at Ascot, shooting at Sandringham, and a trip to Balmoral. This photograph, an exhibit at Maxwell's trial in New York, shows Epstein and Maxwell relaxing at the Queen's Balmoral estate. They were there at Andrew's invitation. Andrew categorically denies knowing of any improper activities by Epstein or anyone else. His lawyers are mounting a robust defence against the civil lawsuit brought against him in New York by Virginia Roberts, or Virginia Giuffre as she is now. In a submission to the court, Andrew's legal team say the case should be dismissed. They say the allegations against him are baseless and motivated by Giuffre's desire for a payday at his expense.
So I left that part out, and I actually couldn't corroborate this line here. But this is information that they received. Giuffre has initiated this baseless lawsuit against Prince Andrew to achieve another payday at his expense and at the expense of those closest to him. I didn't include this, and I think that's going to be number 6. I said 5. This is going to be number 6, and it's probably the most disgusting one, to be honest with you, saying that Virginia Giuffre is literally just after his money. And I think that's so wrong, because we just learned that from Ghislaine Maxwell's case that Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein are both guilty of being predators. Prince Andrew was friends with them, as we just found out and everybody knows. And I don't think that's really fair to just dismiss her claims based on money, because now in a court of law, it's been proven that this is serious and needs to be looked at even closer, especially with Prince Andrew's behavior and how he's lawyering up with Armie Hammer's lawyers, how he's dismissing these claims. I think, there's a smoking gun here, to be honest, where, as I say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I mean, the Ghislaine Maxwell trial verdict is a huge smoke signal, and Prince Andrew should be sweating right now.
Whatever the truth of those allegations, it's clear that Andrew had a long-lasting friendship with Ghislaine Maxwell. It was to her that Andrew turned when Virginia Roberts' allegations surfaced. In January 2015, Andrew emailed Maxwell, "Let me know when we can talk. Got some specific questions to ask you about Virginia Roberts," he wrote. To which Maxwell replied, "Have some info, call me when you have a moment." However, by the time Andrew did his interview with Newsnight, he seemed to want to distance himself from his old friend.
If there are questions...
And that's interesting too. I just want to discuss how there's emails about him basically admitting that he knows who Virginia Roberts or Virginia Giuffre now is. And in this interview, the disastrous interview with BBC, he basically says he doesn't know who she is. So again, being caught in lies, there's emails being brought to light, and this guy is lying so much.
Questions that Ghislaine has to answer, that's her problem. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to comment one way or the other.
A court in New York has now delivered its verdicts on Ghislaine Maxwell. In a few weeks, another court in New York will consider the civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew brought by Virginia Giuffre. Andrew's lawyers will once again plead his innocence of any impropriety. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, the trial of Ghislaine...
Wow. And, one of the big defenses that people use is they don't know Epstein's past, or they weren't friends with Epstein. I mean, that was Ghislaine's major defense. But this is Epstein at the Queen's Lodge, and they kind of flashed this picture. And I'm really sorry to everybody who's a UK person here. I'm a Canadian, and when I saw this picture, I was very disturbed, to say the least. Just the idea that this queen was sitting in the same bench as these two predators is so confounding to me and disturbing. And I feel actually quite bad for the queen. I mean, I have a corgi right here, so I'm a big fan of British lifestyles. And, something about this case that I like about it is learning more about British culture. So when I saw this, I was like, the poor queen, God save the queen from these predators. I wonder if the queen is now going to get that bench removed, because I had no idea that she even had a lodge. And this kind of speaks to Prince Andrew being really close friends with Ghislaine and Epstein. And I think this kind of points towards, because how else did Epstein and Ghislaine get access to the Queen's Lodge was obviously because through Prince Andrew. And Ghislaine was really close friends to Prince Andrew because they both met in Oxford, although Ghislaine was not a good student and she was more of a socialite, which she still was up until that point. And she was high flying, hanging out at the Queen's Lodge, and now she's hanging out in a isolation prison under suicide watch, because something that's interesting about Ghislaine is that her dad was a media mogul, like a billionaire tycoon, and he was caught being a criminal for stealing pensions from his business, and he stole millions and millions of dollars. And his death happened on a yacht called Lady Ghislaine, I think it was called, because Ghislaine was his favorite daughter. He had multiple daughters. And it's so weird that her dad had this conspiracy of, did her dad actually off himself? I can't say the word on YouTube because I will get a community guideline and like an email being like, stop saying that word. Off himself, or was he murdered and on this yacht? Because leading up to this criminal charges brought up against her dad, he was found dead. And the conspiracy is maybe he was murdered or maybe he offed himself. And it's just so weird how this came around full circle. And the moment Ghislaine couldn't get this high-flying lifestyle from her dad, she found Jeffrey Epstein to provide her with this glamorous, extreme wealth. And Epstein suffered the same fate as her dad. And every time I look at them together, I'm blown away. I'm also blown away by the fact that during this entire Ghislaine trial, it came to light that Ghislaine, this is going to be really, really awkward to say, but I didn't know Ghislaine was actually married. And I'm going to get roasted, but I thought it was just like because she was with Epstein and they were doing all this like crazy activity together, she wasn't married, but she's married and her husband is still out there and free. And it's weird. And this is the queen again, looking so innocent. And I just feel so bad for her in this photo. The disgrace, the shame, Prince Andrew. Okay, so let's play this video.
As her victims celebrate their victory, Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team is tonight planning an appeal. Lawyers for Prince Andrew are also reportedly making frantic contingency plans ahead of a key hearing on allegations against him. More from Michael Genovese.
Jeffrey Epstein is dead. And now his enabler is behind bars for sex trafficking. Was there anyone else involved? That's the question for investigators looking to close a lurid chapter of child sex abuse. A day after Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking, her victims are grateful they were heard and believed.
This is one important step towards justice. And I think, in this particular case, we know there were other people involved.
Maxwell's lawyers.
So I just want to point out that's Annie Farmer. She was the only one who actually went on record with her real name, even though the defense lawyers for Ghislaine Maxwell were doxing people. So there was 4 women that took the stand in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. 3 of them used pseudonyms and only one, Annie Farmer, used her real name. But in the defense cross-examination of these testimonies, they were using their real names. And when I tell you these people these lawsuits are going to get really dirty with Prince Andrew, that's an example of like how they're willing to drag these people through the mud. And we talked a little bit about that with how Virginia Giuffre, how her name is going to be dragged through the mud because she actually solicited other members of Epstein's pyramid scheme to join and be abused as well, and that may be used against her as well, which is sick. So let's continue playing.
Will appeal. Her family says she's innocent. Legal analysts say the case is far from over. There's speculation she'll flip, cooperate with police and name others involved in exchange for a light sentence.
And I think anyone who was connected with Jeffrey Epstein, who either participated in sexual abuse or helped him by way of sending girls to him, trafficking, etc., should be very concerned today.
The New York trial was watched closely in the UK, where the tabloids told of panic at the palace Plus, an emergency meeting between Prince Andrew's legal team. He was close friends with both Epstein and Maxwell, and next week will challenge his own accuser, Australian Virginia Giuffre, who claims she was underage when Prince Andrew abused her at homes owned by Maxwell and Epstein. The Prince categorically denies it. Now, a secret settlement deal could reveal the answer. It's an agreement between Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre, signed 12 years ago. It'll be unsealed on Tuesday, another chapter in a saga far from over. In the United States, Michael Genovese, 9 News.
Wow, guys. So I think Robert is still alive. Bushy Crib writes, Sherry Maryberry asks, did Maxwell's husband attend the trial? Excellent question, Sherry Maryberry. And I was actually looking at this the other day, but Maxwell's husband was actually seen with another woman, which is so crazy. So I want to point this out. He was seen with another woman and he was totally absent from the trial. And I don't know how to feel about this. Like, if this is like a good thing or a bad thing.
Their victory.
So Ghislaine Maxwell's absentee husband, Scott Borgenson, skipped her entire trial in favor of cavorting around elite New England enclave with his new gal pal. So this is him, and this is his girlfriend. So he skipped out on Ghislaine Maxwell's verdict. This is so weird because, like, honestly, I'm being honest with everybody here. I had no idea Ghislaine was even married until I saw this article. I was like, what? I thought she was like single, ready to mingle with Epstein, but this is him. He is hanging out. He skipped the trial. So obviously there's problems in his marriage, but this guy also has a ex-wife as well. And this is his ex-wife, and the poor family just thrown into the spotlight. But his ex-wife is really dodged a bullet. I think they're both probably by association again. This guy probably isn't the greatest person either, because he's not even there for his wife when she's convicted to nearly and facing 65 years in prison. So it says here, Scott Borgeson is seen last month in the town of Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. So they live in Massachusetts. This is their home. This is his new girlfriend, and he's just living his life, and he is, just hanging out, living his best life as his wife is facing 65 years in prison. So Borgeson was previously spotted on the terrace of his Massachusetts home in July 2020, just weeks after his wife was arrested at a secluded hideaway in New Hampshire. And yeah, that's what really bothered me about Ghislaine Maxwell, is how she kind of acted like she was a victim the entire time. She was like swept into Epstein's lawsuit. And her defense is actually saying that she was wrongfully prosecuted because Epstein was dead. So they're trying to prosecute Ghislaine for her by just basically taking it out on Ghislaine, because they can't take it out on Epstein. They're just pointing all the fingers at Ghislaine because Epstein can't be prosecuted because Epstein is dead. So that's the defense. They feel like Ghislaine didn't get a fair trial. They feel like people are taking their anger on Epstein out on her because Epstein's dead. And I just think that's wrong. She's going to appeal it, but I hope that appeal gets thrown out. And I really hope that Ghislaine spends the rest of her life behind bars. I mean, she's 60 years old. So 65, I mean, she's still got at least another 20 years on her. And how the mighty have fallen. I mean, Ghislaine was a high-flying, high-profile, hanging out with Prince Andrew, running in the same circles as President Donald Trump, who, by the way, I may expose next, so make sure you subscribe. I know there's a lot of Trump fans, but I may get in trouble for that. Maybe I'll do Bill Clinton first. But, running in the same circles as all these high-profile people, now she's behind bars and rotting away. And, at the end of the day, I really wish that Ghislaine Maxwell was the one paying for her stay at the prison. And I really hope at the end of the day that Epstein fortune goes to the victims. I just want to say that. But the mighty have fallen. Ghislaine Maxwell is now left with behind bars, and her husband, who I want to know if he's going to file for divorce. I guess he has to, is running around with a new woman. I mean, just like, how does this happen? Poetic justice. And I'm not going to say anything good about her husband, because let's be real. Someone wrote here, he sounds about as nice as his wife. Sounds like his ex-wife and children had a lucky escape. Exactly. Hi, Joseph and Gabby, South Africa. Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year. I have been following the Ghislaine Maxwell case for 2 years now. Ever since it started, I've always been a part of the conspiracy that Epstein is possibly still alive. So this has been the best Christmas present for me, because this is a huge development in the case. And at times, I really didn't think that we were going to get a conviction based on women's testimonies. And I really just want to take a moment to applaud the women who came forward, who stepped out of the shadows into the spotlight of the courtroom and convicted Ghislaine Maxwell. And let's just take a moment here to celebrate and say this is going to be a good new year. 2021 hasn't been all that bad, and this has been a great gift to lead us into 2022. And Prince Andrew, you're next, buddy. You're next. So if you want to stay up to date on this developing story, which continues to develop as the days go by, please make sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss a live. Do not forget to like my video. And to all my UK friends, hey, okay, Google, what time is it in UK?
The time in the United Kingdom is 5:12 p.m.
5:12 p.m. I hope all my UK friends have a great rush hour. I love you guys all. Happy New Year, Cheryl G. I want to, Arizona lady, I want to shut some fools up. And it's been fun hanging out with you guys. I love you guys all. And I really hope all my UK friends have a really great New Year. Jeannie M, Happy New Year's, peace and love. Jeannie M, you're the best. Thank you so much, guys. Louis XV11, I don't know, is that a 17? The royal family are above the law. I really hope that they're not above the law, Louis. Oh my God. I want to see Prince Andrew get his day in court, get the charges pressed against him, get sued, all that stuff by Giuffre. I think this guy should never be above the law. And as we learned in the United States, no one is above the law, including socialites, including, Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's hope that this case, we get some justice. And I love to see women speak up and step forward. And let's make those voices stronger. And you can be sure you will find that on my channel. So thank you so much, guys. Happy New Year. I love you guys. You guys are the best. Thank you for that super chat, Jeannie M. And I really appreciate everybody hanging out. It's been real. And I look forward to reading your chats all to the right here. So until next time, guys, stay safe. Love you guys all. And to all my UK friends, have a safe rush hour trip back home to your loved ones, and have a